So, we were talking about this one world government. We were talking about this, they call it shadow government, one world government, cabal. But what do you see happening? What do you see the next step is in this giant overtake of this one world government? What's their next move?
Think what they're going to try to do, they're going to try to infiltrate every single area of our life. They're going to try to control every aspect, everything that's going on, because that's the thing that they can't stand. They can't stand for us to have control. And if you're looking at what's going on right now, I mean, some of that stuff is just, it's absolutely being revealed. Like I said, one of the things that, we found that, some people, their eyes are being opened by different things. Some people, it takes what was happening with the hedge funds and with GameStop,
Yeah,
and then they're starting to recognize it. Um,
yeah,
but
yeah.
what I see the Lord doing for the church, though, is I see the Lord is absolutely opening the eyes of the church. And the scripture that I got to go with that is Ephesians 5:13. And it says, "But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, for everything that is illuminated becomes a light itself. So it is said, 'Wake up, O sleeper, rise up from the dead, and Christ will shine on you.'" And what I think God's saying in the midst of this is that the time for the church, it's time for the church to open its eyes, to rise up, take its authority. And as things are being revealed like this, the scripture says, and what I just read, that it becomes light. And because it becomes light, that means that it's made visible, and you're able to learn from it, you're able to grow from it, and and as Christians, we have authority over it. And so I think what's happening is that this is the time for the church like never before. And it's not
Mm.
the time of the revelations yet, but it is the time for the revealing.
This is a worldwide. This is what
Absolutely
the
worldwide.
scripture talks about. That messiahs will come. They will deceive you. And James is talking about this is the cabal. This is whatever name you want to put on it. This is over, but not a takeover just physically. It's a takeover spiritually.
It is,
Okay.
it is absolutely a
Yeah.
takeover spiritually, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So my next question here, we're talking about Matthew 24. All right. Um, if Matthew 24, verse 22, whoever wants to take this, if those days had not been cut short, and no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if everyone says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or here he is, do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the very elect. My question is, what in the world are these signs and wonders? Talking about verse 24, false prophets showing up with these false great signs and wonders to deceive. It doesn't say false signs and wonders, it says great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, the very elect. Again, who's this Messiah that's going to show up, this false prophet? And what are these signs and wonders? What do they look like?
Well, I believe that the signs and wonders, the thing you have to say about signs and wonders in the kingdom is what source do they point to? Are they pointing to God? Are they giving Jesus glory? Are they giving man glory? And there's a motive behind signs and wonders. That's why there's a power. Even the enemy can heal. We can take it back to Egypt. And Pharaoh's sorcerers, they were able to do so many signs and wonders, but they came up to a place, I think it was with the blood, and they could not perform that. And there is a place in this hour that many have their eyes on the movements. We're in a spiritual awakening, not just a natural understanding and awakening. We're in a spiritual awakening. That's both sides. It's the kingdom of darkness and it's the kingdom of light. So the only way to test it is by the fruit of the believer. The enemy cannot mock love. The enemy, he only has hate. He's a liar. So we have to get back to the basics of kingdom, the fruit of the Spirit, and what that looks like. When we begin to understand that signs and the wonders are there to verify that Jesus is the Messiah, that's when we begin to see the power of it. But know this, you have to test. That's why we're told to test all things and hold to that which is true.
Wow, time for the revealing. That's good. I have a question for anyone that wants to answer this, and this is anybody, okay? It seemed to me that when Jesus walked the face of the earth, okay, from what I read, that he didn't deal much with, quote, the government. Now, he dealt with the religious government. He dealt with the Pharisees, with the scribes. He actually, he basically called them children of hell. But I didn't see him, except for Pilate, coming against the government. He did say to Pilate, he said, "You have no power except the power my Father's given you." And this is right before his crucifixion. And here's my question. Why didn't Jesus come against the Roman government, make that such an issue? Because they were pretty, they were pretty hard on people. Anybody want to chime in on that? Why you think maybe Jesus didn't address that more than what he did?
I'd love to hear Pastor Mike speak on that.
Okay, you just got elected, Pastor Mike.
Well, the answer is actually quite simple. It would be the equivalent of me railing against the government of the United Kingdom. I'm not a citizen of the United Kingdom. They're not going to listen to me about changing any of their laws. Jesus didn't rail against the Romans because he wasn't a Roman citizen, but he did rail against the government of the Jews, which was the Sanhedrin. They were not just religious leaders, they were also civic leaders, and they had the right, and they exercised that right, even under the Roman government, to order their civic relationships. They passed out sentences and judgments. The only thing that was barred from them was execution, and that's why they took Jesus to Pilate. So I would argue that Jesus actually did address the government on numerous occasions when he addressed the Sanhedrin.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And that's the other thing too. People tell me, say, David, why do you bash the church? First of all, I don't bash the church. I don't try to bash anybody. All I try to do is tell the truth. If that's bashing, okay, it's telling the truth. But I don't come against, quote, the government as much as I do the government of the church, okay? And I'm talking about the corrupt government, or the government of the corrupt church. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. You guys can chime in. But if the church was doing its job, really doing its job, and pastors would get in the pulpit and actually tell the truth instead of being little wimpy old, scaredy cats, we may not be where we are right now. Maybe it's my anxiety toward seeing some of this stuff, but I'm watching Fox News the other night, and I see Franklin Graham come on, okay? And I'm going, well, this is interesting. He's like got a commercial here, and he's basically giving out a prayer of salvation. There's no such thing as a salvation prayer, but he gives this out, invitation to come to Christ. And I said to my wife, I said, honey, if this man would take the money he's spending, and I'm sure he's spending millions, and he would talk about something that would really affect the people, we might have something going on here. And all of a sudden, boy, did people, my kids, my wife, everybody walked out on me. They said, yeah, what are you talking about? He's preaching Jesus. I said, I know he's preaching. That's not what I'm talking about. People have heard that over and over again. He needs to preach God's government. He needs to preach, land the plane, tell the people what's really going on and what the Bible is saying about that. Does that make any sense, anybody?
Yeah, David, that's exactly it. It's because we had the separation of church and state. Okay. And I believe that that's the lie that we have bought into in our modern church, because we don't talk about the issues. We don't talk about the things. We don't talk about, voting isn't about a candidate. It's about what their platform stands for. The right to life, Israel, these things. But see, pastors won't touch that because of their 501c3. They don't want to be booted. They don't want to, whatever might happen to them. But I think God is calling us in this hour to say goodbye to all that and stand up. I believe part of what we're seeing is that those who will not stand up for the truth will have no influence in the days ahead. God is going to use the ones that will stand up in this hour for the truth, even if it costs us everything we own, our life, our credibility, because we answer to one. His name is Jesus, and we're known in heaven. And if we're known in heaven, we should be making him known on earth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was Joanna, right? Joanna. Yeah, this 501c3 thing, I don't want to get off on it because that's a whole show. But it ain't, these preachers, they use that as an excuse. It's not the 501c3. It's a 501c, see me go run and hide, because I'm too chicken to get up and talk about things. And they're worried about someone writing those fat checks out there. It's going to stop writing those fat checks or offending somebody. Who knows who they're offending? I mean, look, you're right. It's kind of like we got to tear all this stuff down and start all over again.
The time has come for God's people to take a stand. Legalize Jesus. Text 71777, the word chosen, to 71777, or go to davidhevner.tv/chosen. Join the movement.